The Agenda is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service, moving forward.
Hello and welcome back to The Agenda. Today we are thrilled to have Delaware State Senator Kyle Evans-Gay here joining us as she campaigns for Lieutenant Governor, a passionate advocate for her community. Kyle has built a reputation for her leadership on issues like environmental protection, criminal justice reform, economic development. But as the election approaches, the race for Lieutenant Governor is heating up, with Kyle going head-to-head with Senator Ruth Briggs King. We'll explore how Ms. Evans-Gay experiences in the legislature has helped prepare her for this new role, and her plans for day one, and what she hopes to achieve in her first 100 days if elected. We'll also dive into what sets her apart from her opponent and where she sees the greatest opportunities for change in Delaware. At the same time, the race for governor is nearing its final stretch, with Matt Meyer and Mike Ramone both offering distinct visions for Delaware's future. The stakes are high in this election cycle, and today we'll focus on how the office of Lieutenant Governor can complement that of the next governor, and why this election matters for the direction of the state. So let's get started. And here directly in DETV studios, Senator Kyle Evans-Gay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yes, first-time guest. I appreciate you being here. Hope to see you again.
Absolutely, me too.
In some capacity or another. We've done, 2 or 3 debates this season? I think it's been 2.
Yeah, there's a great opportunity for people to have a great discourse. You did a wonderful job. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the folks who were live in Canaan,
yes,
and that were watching online as well.
It's been great. I've been I've been holding accountable to those that are running. I need to know the vision, and I'll tell you why. I've been passionate about education. I've been focusing on the issues since about May or June. I've said, what is it that Delaware needs that we're not doing well in? What is it that the voters are not seeing? What is the voters need to have more education on? And that is education itself. So I've been kind of direct with candidates in regards to that. And when they have less than lackluster answers, I've been bringing that to their attention.
Good.
But the other part about that is I think that has to do with your vision for what you see as your role from whatever that position is. And for you as a lieutenant governor, I think the vision is your first right now, because you really don't know what you're going to get into until you get in there, if you get in there.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing to your opponent. What do you want to accomplish like your first 100 days?
Yeah, the first 100 days, it's so important that you ask that, because we run and run and run. And what I've been saying to everyone is that really the campaign is just the dress rehearsal. This is our opportunity to have the conversations. And then on day one, we get to start with the good stuff and getting to work on behalf of the people of Delaware. 100 days in Lieutenant Governor's office looks different from the governor, who has to really set up the administration. As you know, the Lieutenant Governor has a couple specific roles. And so jumping headfirst into leading in the Senate, making sure that the legislature is operating, that we're presiding over the Senate, that we're building those relationships, bringing people in, that's going to happen before we know it. And then, of course, making sure that the transition for the Board of Pardons is smooth and doesn't affect those constituencies who are trying to access second chances, trying to have hearings, and making sure that that is smooth. Those will be forefront day one. But I think particularly for this role, a role that there's so much opportunity to define it for oneself, define it for the administration, define it for the people of Delaware. It's about taking the time to stop, make a plan, and communicate that plan, and to really work with the important stakeholders. You know, I know you spoke with former Governor Jack Markell recently. One thing I really admire about Governor Markell is that he took the time to sit down with each legislator who would meet with him. I think you really have to sit down with people, articulate your vision, and most importantly, listen. During my time as state senator, I've done town halls. I hope to be both in community with our communities and in community with our leaders in that first 100 days, so they know where I want to go with their help, and they can tell me how I can be a benefit to them.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing that. Some people say, hey, this is where I want to go, but this is my issue. Is that Delaware's not doing well in a lot of areas. And I love to be able to brag about my state. And I find things to brag about, but I also know that there's things that we can't brag about. Mm-hmm. And there are some major things. And I've spoken about healthcare. I've spoken about education. And there's also finding a home here in the state of Delaware. Yeah. It's more difficult. I believe that the divide between wealthy and poor is getting greater and greater and greater, and we're seeing that in regards to home ownership, and we're seeing that because that's the number one investment for people, and because of their inability to do so, I believe that wealth gap is increasing, all of which can't be fixed through the governor's office. You can make promises of change and whatever, but some of that has to fix at a different level. So what would be, out of all of what I've said and what you're doing, what are some of your day one priorities?
Well, I really appreciate you mentioning kind of healthcare, education. I think I heard some workforce in there, because that really, to me, speaks to where my priorities are. I'll tell you where I've come from, what I'm doing now, and where I want to go, right? Come from a background where policy-wise I've been able to serve on the education committee, been able to work with early childhood education, and we've really transitioned our strategy, I would say, around that to both talking about it in the educational space and in the workforce space. And I really want to break down barriers between education and workforce. I want to talk about these two issues as they are so intertwined, because when we talk about early child care, we're talking about getting parents back to work. When we talk about K through 12, we're talking about building a workforce for the next generation. And we talk about early child care, we're talking about getting kids ready for school, imbuing equity into these programs so that every kid has an equal chance. And we can talk a little bit about the work we've done in the Senate to do that. When we talk about K through 12 as well, we're talking about getting kids an opportunity to succeed by showing them the opportunity that education has to offer. And so you're right. We can't brag about our education right now. We can't brag about our workforce. But I believe if we try to attack these two issues together and have programs that reach into both spaces, we're going to be more holistic in our process, and we're going to have better results for both on the back end.
I made it clear to gubernatorial candidate Matt Meyer that programs are great, but programmatics, I think, also put us in a situation that we are now. I think that we have to be very accountable as regards to every dollar that goes to a program, and ensuring that that is showing value other than programmatic success. Just because you made the milestones of that program and you've done well in your due diligence as far as accountability and accounting, that doesn't make you a successful program in regards to education. How did you affect the lives of the people, the students that you reached out to? Because it goes back to your point. Workforce is very, very important right now. I think the message that we need to give employers is that our students are ready. Right now, with our graduation rate the way it is and our reading levels the way it is, we cannot have that conversation and be confident about it. The other part that I've made clear to candidates is, and when it comes to the education side, is the flash to bang. I believe that candidates such as yourselves have some great ideas and to making things work. My problem is, even though you addressed the idea and you even passed the legislation in May, it's going to take how long for it to be successful and be implemented into the schools? Gotcha. I think it could be up to a decade. I think it could be 5 years before we see a big delta in regards to educational change and education that can affect employers in a positive way and boosting the workforce. Yeah. I know that a lot of that is going to be legislation. And because you are currently a senator, you understand how Dover works. Dover works at its own beat, and you have that pulse. You know how that goes. Yeah. How would you say that that's going to be beneficial if elected to Lieutenant Governor?
I promise I'll answer that question, but you said something that really is central to who I am and why I'm running for office. And so if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a beat.
Do it.
I've been talking to people up and down the state for over a year now, and the big question is, why are you running for Lieutenant Governor? And I said, because I don't believe that I can run enough legislation to change the structures that need to be changed here in Delaware in order to see real results. So when you're talking about structures over programs, when you're thinking about big change, I'm so glad to hear that. And I feel like there are people across the state who are hungry for that change and ready to take those steps. When you talk about accountability, right? How is the money being spent? I just want to take a moment to think about how, because of legislative oversight that I led in the Senate, we're able to find unspent dollars in the child care space, leverage those unspent dollars to go straight to families, to reduce copays, in fact, eliminate them for the majority of those accessing the child care payments, and do it all without adding additional tax burdens. And so when we talk about accountability, future Governor Meyer and I have talked about both this, right? Accountability, not for accountability's sake, accountability so we can do a better job. And so I do think that all of this wraps into how can we be better for Delaware? And I think that's the new generation, the new vision of leadership that we are offering. And I'm excited to have that conversation with Delawareans. When you talk about the Senate, my experience there, I ran for the Senate because, people have heard me say this, I was a frustrated mom. I have 2 kids, they're now 5 and 7. They were very little when I ran for office. And people suggested, you can wait. And I said, I don't have time to wait. My kids can't wait. Our kids cannot wait for us to take action. And when I got to the legislature, I quickly learned what's possible by passing legislation, by working together across party lines in both chambers, by building coalitions around ideas like the child care work, where we had folks from Sussex County supporting it, folks from the Newcastle County, folks from Republicans and Democrats. And I know that that will be an integral piece of executing the vision going forward. But what I also know is that we need to be more unified. We have a Democratic trifecta in this state. I hope that we continue with a Democratic trifecta. It's a privilege to have that. It is a responsibility, and we need to work better together. And it's my hope that having the experience I have in the Senate, I'm able to bring those relationships to the table. I'm hopeful that I can bring good news from the administration, and that together we can move forward with a unified plan so that we can change structures and not let politics get in the way.
Yeah, I think it's not only hopeful, it's necessary. We can't do this, or we're going to slip further and further down this cauldron of bad things happening. I wasn't aware of the billions of dollars that we're currently spending on education. I wasn't aware of the billions of dollars that we're currently spending on healthcare. Those numbers are continually rising. I still believe firmly that we can do a lot here in Delaware. We have roughly 1 million people here in the state. I think that's a great test group for so many other programs and organizations to come in and help us find a better way. Great. I just hope that we're facilitating those conversations. I hope that whomever is elected, that they have the wherewithal to continue and push and get that done and keep that mindset. So, I think that your knowledge in regards to how Dover works, it's essential. It's essential. I just want to be clear for not just me, but for the viewers too, that they know what your number one goal is, your passion project, what you want to bring to Delawareans to make their lives better, to make Delaware better. Every lieutenant governor that I've spoken with, and even every governor, has that one passion project, that thing that gets the most of their attention at times. And this is your opportunity to tell Delaware what's yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to tell you what mine is and what I will continue, because I don't want anything to be lost as we transition into a new administration. But it sounds like we have a lot in common. Education is top of mind for me. Like I said, I have 2 young girls. They are in our public schools. I am investing at the ground level. My family is invested in our local schools succeeding. My husband is there at the PTA meetings, helping out, while I'm down in Dover trying to do my best by education policy. In the new administration, I would hope to expand how we think about improving education. Not just the ABCs that we think about as far as the test scores and things like that, but how are we doing best by teachers? And then how are we doing best by parents, making them feel part of the community? And how are we doing best by kids? And that is the educational opportunity they have. It's those intangibles that they'll get, that confidence, that opportunity, that vision that they can create for themselves. but it also is critically the wraparound services and the ways that we reach them when they're in school with food, mental health supports, behavioral health supports. I've said this, a lot of places, my kids at school, they get breakfast and lunch. I don't know why we can't have that for every child here in Delaware.
Yeah, and I think that for me, when it comes to education, I don't want to turn this interview completely in education, and I think you knew that. You're messing with me. No, I just kidding. I think that what happens to our students, especially our vulnerable students, between 4 p.m. and 8 a.m. or whenever school starts and stops is essential. Yeah. And there were times in generations prior to that I kind of took that for granted. Now we can't. So some of those programs have to extend into those hours. So we're continuing the work that we're doing with these students, especially the vulnerable students. I don't know, but when it comes to it, what is your vision for the role of Lieutenant Governor? Like, how does all this, I'm trying to bring all this into education, but what is your vision for that role?
Thank you for asking, because like I said earlier, we have such an opportunity here to leverage a statewide office, an office with a mandate to reach Delawareans in every community and use it to benefit those Delawareans, to be a helpful person in the legislature, a helpful person in the administration, but to chart a new path. And for me, I believe that the office should be nimble. I think it should be responsive.
Yes.
I think that we need to continue the important work where we've been addressing mental health and behavioral health. I think that we need to have an ability to really think about that structural change in education. But at the end of the day, while the governor's mandate is the entire state administration, the lieutenant governor's office, if staffed with talented people who reflect our state, can be a first responder in places where we need it. And I think that I'm up for that challenge. I know I can surround myself with people who are up for that challenge. And I think that I have a desire to be on the ground. I have a desire to be in places across our state where I can listen. And I think that outreach, that responsiveness,
it's essential.
We deserve it.
Right. And I'm comparing, but history says that our previous lieutenant governor was very much on the ground, right?
That's right.
There were communities that she was in that you wouldn't expect to see your lieutenant governor doing tasks that you wouldn't expect a lieutenant governor to see doing. And it was commendable, but it was also her job. And she took that very seriously. Yeah. You as possibly the next lieutenant governor, how will you continue to serve those underprivileged neighborhoods and areas? And is your expectation to be in there doing the same thing with your sleeves rolled up, getting it done?
I hope so. That is my intent. It's how I've operated as a state senator. It's been my pleasure to go, like I said, across the state with town halls. In places in my district where we have particular challenges, I've been able to partner with those on the ground, with local community centers, to really understand how I can be present in ways that are meaningful and impactful and that drive change and drive opportunity to see that change. I want it to be more than just performative. I want us to see that the impact of the office is meaningful. And I will be holding my partners accountable in that way too. Bring me in ways that make a difference. And I will hopefully be able to build out those partnerships statewide. I've already been able to do so on the campaign trail. We talked about it earlier. This is the dress rehearsal. This is the opportunity. When I make my case, I'm also asking people, what do they need from the lieutenant governor's office, the future lieutenant governor's office? So
is that the metrics that you use to find success in yourself and what you're doing?
The
items that you said that you're judging, like what is the metrics that you use to say, hey, I'm doing a good job, or I'm actually reaching out to the community, I'm doing a good thing, people are happy, I'm nailing it. Like, what are some of the criteria that you use?
No, that's a great question. I would say that you can't go on vibes alone, right? So what we're looking for is, like I said, that translation into action orientation. For me, being a senator, you see that with legislation, and you can see that you've gone from an idea to advocacy to seeing something to fruition.
Right.
It's harder in lieutenant governor's office, I think, to be that direct. But unless you can measure your success, unless you have a plan, then you can't go back to the people and say, look what we've done.
Right.
And so what I've been telling people is you start with a strategy, and that's what we talked about in the 100 days. You start with articulating the plan, you start with saying where you're going to focus, and you start by asking people how they can help with that and where they need that help. You've got to make a strategic plan for structural change. You've got to make a strategic plan for making an impact in community. We ask this of our business partners. We ask this of our nonprofit partners. Like I said, I'm running to be a new generation of leader, and I'm hoping to bring some of those principles into the government office.
I hope to see it. I want to see it. The gubernatorial race is not finished yet.
That's right.
There's still a general election that has to go forward and do some things. And how are you going to work with both candidates? I mean, because you don't know who's going to win.
Yeah.
How do you feel, and as far as working with whomever, and what's your incentives there?
No, I appreciate it, because I've been answering this question for over a year now, because there was a primary as well,
Yeah.
right? And importantly in Delaware, and it's important for your viewers to remember that we don't run as a ticket. So they have to vote
That's right.
down ballot. And I'm going to encourage them to go all the way down the ballot, especially those local elections, the representatives, senators, town council, city council. Those people make such important decisions. And I hope
Yes.
everyone goes all the way down the ballot there. But you have to choose lieutenant governor separately. So I'm making a separate case, but I'm telling you that, should we have, like we did, 30 or 40 years ago, a different ticket, we'll make it work. Because I do believe that everyone who is stepping up with the right intention to do the right thing on behalf of Delaware. Now, I'll also tell you that I'm really excited to work with our next governor, Matt Meyer, and I'm really proud of our ticket up and down the ballot. We're being led by our next senator, Lisa Blunt Rochester, who continues to just really, there's no words. There's no words.
She's taken off a rocket ship that is going to be I believe, and in my opinion, our next senator, and is going to do a great job for us, as she's already done in the House there. And I look forward to her next move.
And she's taking care to make sure that Democrats statewide are seen, heard, and that the vision is shared. And that is the type of leadership that isn't just an election year. She's leading all of us in the long term.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the show.
Sure.
Last couple minutes.
Yeah.
Tell us why people should vote for you to be the next lieutenant governor.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to make a short pitch here. Really, like we've talked about a little bit, is that I'm ready for change, but I think change in the way that a lot of us have been asking for years. I start off by telling you I was an angry mom who went to Dover. I'm looking for people who are dedicated to saying what they are going to accomplish and working with community to get there. That's who I put my energies behind before, and now I'm working to be that person statewide. I think a new generation, a new perspective, a new vision, and I think you'll hear from my opponent that she believes a new party is the right change. And I think you have to go on what's been accomplished, look at our records, look at the pieces of legislation and the initiatives, the successes in 4 years that I've been able to move through the General Assembly, the partnerships that I've been able to make. I want to continue that work with a statewide mandate. When you think about some of the issues that are going to define this election, reproductive justice, common sense gun laws, safety in our communities, I have been able not only to vote in favor of many of these initiatives, but lead on them. And I am proud of that record. And I believe that my record and my vision matches the vision that Delawareans have. I have a young family. I have chosen Delaware, and I am ready to give back to this state every opportunity that I have been blessed to have. And so I am excited to run in this race. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm going to ask your viewers and everyone across the state that they'll support me and our county executive as he moves on to the next role as well.
How has your family held up over the past 3 to 4 months? I know that you're a mother. You take your job very seriously as mother,
Yes.
and it's not easy campaigning. It's not. So how is the family held up?
It is not easy campaigning, and you're right, mom is my best role. My family, I just can't say enough good things. You're gonna make me get emotional, but I've got the most supportive partner. I've got parents, an extended family who really believe in what we're doing. And my kids have had amazing opportunities to see every part of our state. And we've incorporated them into what we are doing in ways that they ask questions about why they can't vote. And they're a little upset about it. So I think that a friend of mine says we should always do our work like the kids are watching. They are watching. Yeah. And let us be the best example for them moving forward.
There you've heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Kyle Evans-Gay, thank you so much for joining Senator Gay. I appreciate it. We hope to have you back here on the agenda real soon.
Fingers crossed.
Real soon. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, 1 year ago today, the world watched in horror as the conflict in Israel and Gaza escalated to unimaginable levels. Bombs rained down on neighborhoods, rockets soared overhead, and amidst the chaos, something was lost. Something more than buildings, more than territory, more than military objectives. What was lost was humanity. Because the war isn't just fought on the battlefields, it's fought in homes, on streets, in schools, and in hospitals. It's fought in places where civilians and families and children and people who had no say in the fight find themselves paying the ultimate price. And on this day, 1 year ago today, the world saw the cost in real time. We saw it in the images of crumbling buildings, in the eyes of mothers that are searching for their children, in the haunting silences of lives erased by senseless violence. We saw it when a missile shattered a family dinner. We saw it when a rocket obliterated a schoolyard. We saw it when hospitals became war zones and when places of worship were no longer sanctuaries, but targets. But we just didn't see it. We felt it. We felt it when we asked ourselves the same question over and over again. How did we get here? How did we, as a global community, allow this to happen? The answer isn't simple. It never is. It's a complex web of politics, of power, and of history, and of tragedy so old that it is ingrained into the fabric of the religion. But one thing remains clear. In the fog of war, the one constant is suffering, and it's civilians who bear it the most. Today, as we reflect on what's happened since, we must ask ourselves a very difficult question. Not how we got here, but how do we move forward? Because the world doesn't need more words. It needs actions. And that action isn't military. It isn't about retribution or retaliation. It's about remembering that in every war, there are faces behind the numbers, names behind the headlines. And there are children who just want to grow up, and parents who want to see their children grow up and want to see their children come home. 1 year later, we are still witnessing the consequences of violence that spirals out of control. 1 year later, the world has grown tired of the images of destruction. But the people living in this reality, they can't turn it off. They can't move on. And we can't fix the past. We can't bring back the years of their lives that they lost. But we can demand from those who hold power accountability. We can demand compassion. And here in the United States, in just a few short weeks, we have the opportunity to demand exactly that from the people that we elect to represent us. As we head into this election, let's not be afraid to ask the hard questions of our leaders. Let's demand to know where they stand, not just on foreign policy, but on humanity. Let's ask them how they plan to protect the innocent, and how they'll handle global conflict, and how they'll work to prevent another year like this from happening. Because 1 year from now, we should not be sitting here asking the same question, looking at the same images, and feeling the same sorrow. 1 year from now, we can hope for peace. And in hope is something that we can all still vote for. That's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Good day.